all types of friends. I made from Caucasians to other blacks to other nationalities I never even thought existed. But yeah, I love where I'm from. It taught me a lot. How about y'all?
Kevin, what you love about Boston?
Man, I love my city.
What you love about Boston? The bean, 3 for the stripes.
I got love for Boston.
Adidas.
I do got love for Boston. Don't get it twisted.
Listen.
You're the one who just said
I'm not from this.
You turned it to Kev. So Kev, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Listen, my city, born and raised in Boston, inner city kid. I loved everything about it. You know, you learned growing up in the inner city. You learned a lot of things at an early age. Made great friends. Went to high school out here. Went to middle school, elementary, everything. Like some of my friends today, I met in elementary and middle school, and we're still close. Don't kick me. One of them is in the room right now. But when it comes to Boston, man, I love the fact that we have a city life, but it's not ridiculous like New York City or slow as LA. We're Boston, man. You know what I mean? And now we got our sports teams on the map. We're college town, USA. You can't take that away from us. Never take that away from us. And you know, we just be vibing, bro. Like,
I love my city too.
Yeah, great talk for Somerville.
Boston. I mean, as far as the conversation around Boston and what I love about my city, you know, I mean, I agree with all of you. Well, I don't know what Barack Obama likes about Boston. He's from Somerville, but
He's from Somerville.
what I know, I'm born and raised here. You know, born in Mattapan, raised in Hyde Park, and I currently reside in Rosendale. And I love my city because of the vibrancy of the culture.
So
I love
purebred Bostonian.
Purebred. Went to school, elementary, like preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school. My college education, both for undergrad and graduate school, has intentionally been in the city. I did not want to leave it. Everything that I do is about developing and empowering my community, my city. So what I love about what Boston has to offer, like I said, is the vibrancy of the culture, the livelihood of our people, it's the resiliency of our people. You know, it's the fact that the black community in the city of Boston is not just African American, but you have the Caribbean folk, you have the African natives in this area. You know, when you have the Latin community, you have the Latinx, you have the Afro-Caribbean, but you have the European, you have all of it. It's in this space. You have the Asians in our territory, in this territory as well. And I love that. And I love that I can go into a Boston public school and see the diversity in the classrooms. Yes, you know, there's a lot more students of color in certain schools depending on where you're located, but it's in the room. You know, I love that we have a great education system, like Kevin said. I love the fact that we have a lot of amazing hospitals. You know, Boston is one of the places with the best medical care and systems.
So
y'all ask me. Y'all each had your time. I'm telling you what I like.
Hey, listen, Boston, if you want to jump in this conversation, the phone number is 774-247-4757. What I say?
247.
Still too many numbers, bro.
So
774-257-4722.
Listen, all that she said, we got that on the other side of the bridge. It's just smaller.
Okay, all right. So the focus of tonight's show, though, is city love. So we're talking about Boston city love.
No, we're talking about city love in general.
While you have the love for Somerville, which is greatly appreciated.
I love Boston too. I'm just saying. I'm talking about where I'm from.
Right tonight. We're focusing on Boston. Okay, anyway, so Stephen, talk to us. What do you love about Boston? Because you've been here. What do you love about the city?
Get with him, man.
He's just like, I
don't want no problems, man.
Come on, man.
What I love about Boston is the greatest small big city on the planet to me.
Facts.
It's like it's like the city that makes diamonds. You know, the pressure of growing up here. If you can grow up in Boston and become an adult, you can live anywhere else on the planet. You know, and you're definitely a diamond.
We'd have to study that. I don't know if that's factual, but
it's factual.
It's appreciated.
New York stole that line from Boston, right?
It's easy to live in New York. You know why? Because you can keep reinventing yourself in New York.
That's it.
You can reinvent yourself 5 different times in New York. There's no reinventing yourself. If you was corny in Mattapan, you're going to be corny in Roxbury. You know what I'm saying? There's no reinventing yourself.
Well, but that's because we're so small. And that is another thing.
No, it's not because it's small. It's just because that's how the city is.
Well, I I hear you, but I think it is also because we're smaller. But I don't look at because we're small as a negative thing. I look at because we're small as something positive, right? Where it's like people know each other, and I think that that's
One
important.
degree of
That's
separation.
right. It's like it's not one of those like hustle and bustle. It's a hustle and bustle city for sure, but I think that it has the big city feel at times when you need it, and I think it also has that small city feel when you need it as well. So if you want to always be super busy, you can do that. But if you want to take some time for solitude and be on your own, you can do that. And I love that if you want to accomplish something, if you want to intern somewhere, if you'd like a job somewhere, if you want to transition schools or places of employment, Google it, look it up, go into your own personal networks, ask somebody if you know somebody who knows somebody, and chances are, truthfully, I'd like to say 9 out of 10, somebody knows somebody who can connect you some way, somehow. And I think that that's what I love. And so I think to your point, you know, we might not be able to, if you're corny in Mattapan, you're corny in Dorchester, right? But if you're also excelling in Mattapan, then you're also excelling in Dorchester. And I think it's because we were able to keep our eyes on each
That's
other
not
in
true.
different ways.
I disagree.
Okay.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on elsewhere in other cities. Boston's probably the biggest metropolitan city out here in Massachusetts. That's cool. There's a lot more going on.
Jesus
outside.
Christ, we know you love Somerville, bro.
I was raised in Boston too. I actually lived in Roxbury. I lived in Roxbury.
Oh, so you're claiming it today?
I did.
Or?
We got no. I mean, I'm claiming Somerville. That's where I was raised at. That's where I was at. My teenage years, my adult years. That's where I'm claiming.
Somerville, stand up, y'all. Somerville, stand up,
Yo, I
man.
could be the
And
only
no
one.
one is standing. It's
Listen, I
okay.
could be the only one from that spot.
When you-
Y'all
when
have a great Haitian restaurant in Somerville, though, so I can tell that.
when you leave Massachusetts, where you say you from?
You gotta say Boston. You have to say Boston.
Nah, don't say Boston. You gotta say Somerville. Outside of Boston. Nah.
Who's gonna know? Who's gonna know any other city outside of Boston?
This is how you say it from now on.
But if that's
I'm
where
from
you're from,
Somerville,
Nah,
outside of Boston.
Right.
All right,
That's
fine with
it.
me.
That's it.
I'm from
That's
Greater
it.
Boston.
What?
No, you can't say that. There's
No.
places-
Somerville's not greater, but do you know how long you're on
Get
that highway?
Boston out of your
Do you
mind,
know
bro.
how long you're on that highway out of Boston?
11
into
minutes.
Somerville? That's not
11 minutes.
That's a
Without
while.
traffic?
Right over the bridge. What's wrong with you?
No,
Put-
no.
put yourself in
What's
some
wrong with
traffic.
me
You there for
is-
an hour,
what's
bro.
wrong with me
Yo,
is
you go. Yo, you
I don't
go.
go over that
He's
bridge.
he's like,
Y'all
he's like,
weird over
I'm not
in
really from
Virginia.
Boston, but I'm from Boston. But when I'm
You
not
go- you
from
go
here,
clubbing
I
out
gotta
there.
say Boston
There's other
because
places-
somebody knows
clubbing in
Somerville.
There's
Somerville.
other places in
Anyway,
Massachusetts
You crazy?
where people stand strong and say, "Where you from?" I'm from Brockton. I'm from New
Somerville.
Bedford.
Go to the city of
I'm
America.
from Fall
I'm fine
River.
with
I'm
that.
from
That's it.
Springfield.
Yo,
That's it.
That's one thing I hate, though.
When I leave
That's one thing I
when I
hate.
leave
As a true
Massachusetts, I hear
Bostonian,
people say that
when
stuff.
people say that, they say that they're from Boston.
I always ask them, "Oh, what part of
Sure.
Boston were you from?" They be like, "Oh,
Somerville,
you heard of
Boston.
That's
Worcester?"
fine with me. I never
That's
said
not
it was.
Boston,
I'm not
bro.
saying you.
That's-
I'm
that's-
not-
Worcester
no,
is
I'm not
far from
saying you.
Boston.
Okay.
I'm not saying you, Barack. What I'm just saying,
I
I
don't need
hate
for it
when
to be
I'm saying you. I'm saying you.
No, right, you're
I'm
saying
I
saying
don't
that's
need it for it
different.
to be. I don't need it for it to be.
Anyway, so we
I'm
just
good.
talked about some of the things that we
You
love
got
about
all
our
these-
city.
You got all these right
We
here.
talked about some of the things we love
Yo,
about our
I'm
city.
not-
I'm gonna need.
What high
listen,
school you went
listen.
to? Somerville High?
I went to Hyde Park High.
Then you don't belong in
Oh,
Boston.
jeez.
I'm a Blue Star, man.
Listen.
Once you jump out into another town high school,
Y'all
that's
look
that's
good.
you.
And I still get love out here.
That-
Y'all
that's
look
you.
funny.
I still get love out here. Where we at right now?
655
Y'all-
You gotta get
Y'all-
permission before you cross the bridge. from now on.
crazy.
Y'all are too funny. Listen,
I gotta check in
Boston.
now. You hear this dude?
Now, Barack's good, man. Barack's good when he comes.
Please.
Barack's
Y'all,
good
y'all,
when he
y'all
comes
better
across the
support
bridge.
your brotherhood. That's what's up. Whatever.
Barack's good when he comes across the bridge.
But back to this conversation. So we talked about what we love about our city. Barack likes Boston when it's relevant. And it works.
Yo,
It
Barack,
works. Barack,
you give
you
me that
just
heat.
explained it.
I'm
That's
cool.
exactly what it was.
I don't need to.
So
I'm
let's
good.
talk about. That's what it was. Let's talk about what we don't enjoy about our city, because with every good comes some bad and some challenges. So what are y'all thoughts about some of the things y'all don't like
See,
about Boston?
See, this is where you guys are gonna call me crazy, and I suppose Steven don't judge me.
What?
When it comes to Boston, I could honestly sit here and say I don't have any real
Qualms?
issues and qualms with Boston, because first of all, what Boston is mostly known for, being the most racist city, I could sit here at my tender age of 30 plus, I didn't encounter any type of racism until I left Massachusetts. Call me naive. I was, maybe I had the blinders on my whole life or something, and I just never paid attention, or I was always in my safe space bubble, and it just never accounted to me until I got into I left Massachusetts. So to me,
You never crossed the bridge.
I don't need nothing over there. I didn't send you over there.
Proving your point.
I didn't send you over there though. You asked me about my city, Boston. Now I can't talk about Somerville, Everett, Southie. I don't go into Southie. Now I go into Southie because there's a different Southie nowadays. But I'm not gonna go put myself in a
there's no reason to
situation.
go to something
Like I didn't even know nothing about the North Shore until I started doing Uber,
So
bro.
basically, he loves Boston because he stayed within particular areas of Boston, y'all. He didn't really transition.
Nah, I stay on the
out.
South Shore and
He
Boston
stayed
area.
in some. It's
I never
okay.
said it was Boston.
You-
I'm just
you love
saying
the person
I
you
don't
like.
cross that bridge, that green thing that looks like it's gonna come down. I do not go across
Okay.
it. There's no
You
point.
Barack,
mean the
Barack,
Jacob?
Barack.
The
So
Zachem just came out.
Barack, in your love hate part-time appreciation for Boston, what are some things that you do not enjoy about the city?
The lack of support.
What in Somerville?
No, this
I'm just asking. No, I didn't get the question.
This is the Boston segment.
Lack
So,
of support. That's all it is.
so what
Yeah,
does
you
that
gotta ask
look
them, though.
like? What does that look like?
Especially on a for something I could touch on, it'd be like, for instance, what I do for a living. Barbers out here, we don't really support each other across. Period. In Massachusetts, there's a select few of barbers that actually show love to each other, male, female. Then you got the hip hop scene. Local rappers don't even break bread with each other. They don't do that at all.
So you don't like it for the entertainment.
I don't like it for support.
And you
I
don't
just said
like the support. No, I'm just elaborating. When you talk about support, you talked about the entertainment industry, and you talked about the profession of being a barber.
Yes, in regards to the support.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. So that's something that.
But
you
is
don't
that
like.
is that a city thing or is it just the people that you're targeting just don't want to support
We
you?
see other cities doing it. Boston doesn't really do it like that.
So Somerville supports you through and through.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I got a lot
A
of
lot
love
of people
for
from Boston go to Somerville.
I got a lot of love from people
That's
from
that's what my
So,
all
so
the
you
way around.
so you do a
As a-
census
as
every
a-
time you meet
I
somebody
know
out there,
my
be like,
client.
where you living at?
Listen.
Actually, I gotta engage with my clientele, right? I actually do a lot. I got a lot of people from across.
I don't believe.
Massachusetts.
I'm
I
gonna
guarantee
come
you.
and do a census in
Y'all
your shop one day.
do what y'all do, but I can say that in my experience and in my time in the city of Boston, there are things that I truly do not appreciate about the city. While I love the people and I love the
You don't want to let
culture.
Stephen go first because you're
Oh,
gonna take
sorry.
like 30 minutes.
Do you want to share?
You go ahead, sweetie.
All right. Okay. So thank you very much. I'm gonna let
Jesus,
y'all
Stephen.
know what I don't appreciate about the city. So. One thing that I definitely don't appreciate about our city is the systemic levels of oppression that exist. The way that we live in our city of Boston today is a product of the way that we used to live in our history. And you see that within our education system. You see that with our access to resources. You see that within our housing development. You see that within the way we just support the upward mobility of those who are part of the marginalized community to begin with. So you talk about not going to South Boston, right? And that's totally fine, Kevin.
Back in
right?
the day.
Back in the day. Right. Like
I ain't
back
got no
in,
issues with
and now you go. But Southie, for example, is an area where when we talk about desegregating our school systems, it took place there. When you talk about busing, when you talk about taking people from Dorchester, bringing them to the education complex in South Boston, you assess that today it impacts our community. So it didn't just stop there. When you look at poverty, when you look at the drug epidemics that exist in our city, when you look at who's able to thrive here and who's not. When I talk about the systemic, I gotta put this phone down. I know we're live. When we talk about systemic levels of oppression, we see that, and it bothers.
I'm talking about
For
you,
me,
Bernadine.
and for Bernadine, that bothers me because when I'm talking about loving or hating my city, that is something I do not appreciate about my city, whether it impacts me directly or indirectly. And I feel like in all ways it impacts me directly. So the work I do in education, when I cannot recruit and retain the students in my own city to get into the college that I work at, that is a personal problem. Because that's to me looking back at my community and understanding that Boston's education system is not doing our youth a service. When you can't read at your grade, when you can't read at your grade level, but you are promoted. Boston is known for its education system and the Boston natives cannot get accepted into these colleges, that is a personal problem to me when I'm talking about my fight towards addressing educational gaps and disparities that
So
exist.
you're placing all the blame in the educational system, but what are you doing when you go home? Are you just placing these children in front of TV, or are you actually helping them read books? We can't just blame one side of the equation.
Oh, absolutely. So let's talk about the entire side of the equation. You're talking about employment. You're talking about the employment opportunities that exist. The wage gaps are different for people of color and people who are part of impoverished communities. When you talk about Section 8, when you talk about welfare and who is at the prime of that, racially, a lot of white people in our city are really benefiting off of that a lot because, again, it's just like, even though we are very racist in a number of ways, when you talk about the percentage of poverty that exists, white people still outweigh that because of the amount of white people that exist in our city. But regardless, that is a personal thing that targets me. So when you talk about parent, what are we doing? It's not just the education system, it's the parents. But if a parent can't afford, if a parent didn't grow up in an environment where they themselves read, right, that is a problem that will go down to their children as well. And when I talk about that, when I talk about educational gaps and I talk about economic disparities that exist, it's not just today. You talk about home ownership and you talk about the challenges that are existing today in the city of Boston with gentrification and the price of housing here, right? We have to address redlining, red zoning that exists here in our city, in areas like Dorchester and in areas like Roxbury, where we intentionally did not allow black people and people of color to be able to own property here. We intentionally did that. And so that's not just going to go away after 5 years or 10 years. That's within parents' history. That's within people's history. And so you're talking about equitable growth. It's something that needs to be sustained for a long period of time. It's built in our culture, in our ways of grooming people in this city. It's not a reality for support. It's not. And that impacts me when I look around and I have black and brown people who can't afford property here. Right, but I'm talking about, let's celebrate the culture, let's celebrate the diversity. Boston is super diverse, but very segregated. You can drive or walk around certain streets of Dorchester and know where the Haitians occupy the streets. You'll know where the Jamaicans occupy the streets. You'll know where the Asians occupy the streets. You'll know where the white people occupy the streets, right? Very diverse, sure, very segregated. When you talk about politicians, when you talk about police officers, when you talk about the generals, when you talk about the heads of the game, who we're talking about is white men. It's in your pockets.
Here's the problem I have with that argument. It's all one-sided basis. When Mr. Wilson, I let you speak.
Okay.
Mr. Wilson said it earlier himself, right? We have to be able to go out there and service our own community ourselves. If we're not taking care of our own stuff and somebody sees the value that we don't see, then they're going to come in and take what they want. Mm-hmm. We can't just sit here and blame everybody else and then not want to take no blame for ourselves. Right. It's just the same thing that you said, we're reading on this level. Why are we reading on that level? When I was a child, I used to hate it. I used to finish my homework. I can't watch no TV, can't go outside, but I got to do writing, I got to do reading, I got to do mathematics. I was like, I did all this already in school. Mm-hmm. But my mother knew the power of education.
Right.
So parents play a role in this also. And I hear what you said. My mom was working 2 jobs, and I still made sure that my notebook was sitting there when I got home. And when she came home at night, if it wasn't done the way she liked, I'm getting up out of my bed.
Fire!
Come on, we can't just sit here and say, this person didn't do that like Mr. Wilson said earlier. We can't keep walking around looking for the handout and blaming everybody else.
But
we have to take charge of what we want also.
But when you don't have access to it, how can you fight for something you have no access to? If you don't even, and then also, how can you fight and have access to something that you don't even know you can have access to?
I'm an inner city kid, single parent household. I've had no doors or barriers closed towards me because I knew the power of education. I went out there and got everything that I needed and I wanted. I didn't care about the street life and all that other stuff. The person has to want it for themselves, and then the parents have to hold your hand for some accountability. We can't just rely on the teachers that are only like you said. These teachers ain't making nothing, and you want them to do extra on top of that. That's where you can say it's probably some of the city's fault. But at the same time, you talk about schools are overcrowded and all this other stuff. There's all types of other problems where I can see you have a valid point on. But we have to take accountability also at the same time.
Absolutely. The people are part of the so when I talk about my challenges in the city of Boston, it's not just saying like, oh my gosh, it's this governmental issue. That's only that. As it is for the people of Boston as well, right? Like I play a role in that. Like my neighbor plays a role in that. Like Stephen was talking about earlier, right? We can't be waiting for the Messiah. We can't wait for another leader. We are part of that conversation. But at the end of the day, if we are not addressing the real challenges that exist, either we are the people of the city that are creating these certain problems. So if you're leaving it to one particular organization to address the challenges in healthcare and the opioid epidemic that is taking place in our backyards, if you're not addressing the fact that the incarceration rates in our city are outnumbered for our young people and our black people in the city of Boston itself, if you're not going to intentionally put in policies in place to support the educational advancement of our people, if you're not opening your eyes to the fact that while we have amazing healthcare in this community, they still put the marginalized people based on your economic wealth wealth and value at a lower level to access these resources. Like if you're not actually putting that at your forefront either, we're also not addressing the problem. So yes, you
Calm
have
down, calm down.
So yes,
Let other people talk. There's two other people on the show. Calm down,
I'm
people.
just
Calm
saying,
down.
like, come on, like,
let them say so
we're
too.
all part of that conversation.
Listen, be cook.
Cut her mic.
Steve, two
Cut her mic.
quick hits, man. Quick hits, Steve. What you love, what you hate. Quick. Be hits, man.
Are we still on that? What you love, what you hate?
No, we're on
it.
the hate.
Oh
we're
my
just on the hate. He
gosh.
already talked about what he
What
loves.
up? Yeah, what you hate? Quick.
I think she summarized everything that you can hate about the city in a nutshell. But in 2018, access to information to accomplish and do whatever you want is there. If you want to,
They'd rather be on their timeline though.
if you want to buy property, you want education, whatever. But once again, we go back to them for validation.
All right. There we have it. That was a quick hit. That was a quick hit.
We don't have to go back to them to validation about what they say is going on. When they
Create
say
yourself.
they say that neighborhood is nice, we run to it. They say it's time to clean this up, we run to it. When are we going to say this is what's good and this is what's nice and this is what we want? We are the
And
power.
you're hitting.
Now
And Dudley did that.
everything
One
she
area,
says
Dudley Triangle.
is happening every day with BRA and rezoning of the neighborhoods and I mean the list goes on. What's going on and what's being done, but 90% of the time it's done with not even any backlash or any of us coming out to even say anything.
Because we don't care.
That's
a
I don't
problem.
think it's that we don't care. It's that we're a victim of it.
It's not even because you can't play.
We are
You can't play.
We are a victim.
You're only a
of it.
victim. You're only a victim for so long.
We are a victim of it, but the victim stuff only going so far because
Exactly.
because this is an age of information.
And
You're only a
that's
victim.
what you just said. We all live on our phones, but y'all rather be on Instagram and all that other stuff, paying attention to what
Who's y'all? Because I talk to people who
in
work
general. People
and are out
in
here
general.
hustling and busting their butts.
People in general would rather sit on social media, watch reality TV, than push themselves forward. This is why we get stuck in certain situations.
I would say to your statement, there are people. It's not people typically X, Y, and Z. It's like to the people who'd rather stay on their phones and entertain social media more so than go out and work. They are the victims to that reality. But there are people who are out here truly busting their butts, and truthfully, they're the ones we've highlighted on this show. They're the people that we go out in the community to support. They are us when we're out there busting our behinds to make sure that our communities are thriving. So I'm not a person who's on this and I live on social media.
Which is more the demographic? The ones that are us out here trying to bust our ass to change something, or those that are sitting on social media daily and watching World Star? Which one is the bigger demographic?
I truly, in my humble opinion, I think that there are a lot more people who are actually out there in the community who are doing a lot to impact the community and to impact the people and to take themselves out of one level to the next. But I also feel like, because to Stephen's point, we're still not in a position where we're still not in a position where we can say, you know what, we have our own money to support our own efforts. We're still in the position where, you know, you'll go to an event and you're a black young professional who's trying to put on something, still asking for that handout, still asking for permission to utilize that restaurant to throw your event. And I think that what we're really talking about to this conversation is the more people who feel empowered in this urban community, who are part of that marginalized community, who come together and say, you know what, let me take my dollars and invest it back in my community more intentionally, we'll start to see that. Because the minute I'm asking you for permission to do something, I'm asking you for money, I'm asking you for your space, you have the option to say no. You have the option to deny me. And all of a sudden, yes, I'm busting my butt to make that happen, but it's still up to you to determine my fate.
All right, dude, listen.
But
You gotta drop the mic on that one. She dropped the mic on us right there.
oh, she did.
It's tough. It's tough.
That was listen. That was the hot topic of the week, brought to you by the Urban Collective. All right, she dropped the mic on that one. I'm gonna let DJ Smooth take us out right quick.